Hello, thanks everyone for tuning in today for our Connected Data webinar, Finally, a Dropbox-Like Solution for Legal. We'd also like to give a special welcome to our attendees from the International Legal Technology Association joining us for the presentation. Our agenda will include introduction to the cloud storage market, discuss the top 10 challenges of law firms, and finally discuss how Transporter offers a private cloud solution for legal professionals. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you want to type your question on the screen, we'll get to as many of them as possible. You can also use Twitter to interact with us and other attendees during the presentation using the hashtag LegalTech and our Connected Data handle on the screen. If you have to step away at any point, we'll make a recorded version available to all registrants via email following the live presentation. We'll also be offering Amazon gift cards at the end if you want to stay through the end of the presentation, and we'll announce the winners at the end. I'd like now to introduce you to our presenter, Connected Data's Chief Operating Officer, Russ Johnson.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Thank you for making some time to join us today and learn a little bit about Transporter and how it can work for the legal environment. Brief look at our agenda. Some of the topics we'll talk about today is the changing landscape of file access and management, how Transporter ties in with that in a way that meets the top 10 challenges of law firms, and integrating your NAS for your current primary storage infrastructure into a Transporter environment to meet those new challenges and address the changing landscape of file access and management. Then we'll have a brief a few minutes there for some Q&A, as Lisa mentioned. So the way users access and manage files has changed, and the key point here is users. It's really been brought about by changes in the user landscape and finding an easier way to access and manage files as opposed to cumbersome VPNs and shared drive access. And as this has occurred, IT attempts to control the data, but users are going rogue and continuing to use these other vehicles or other services, namely public cloud services that make it easier for them to get their job done, but causes some confidentiality and IT control problems, especially for legal firms. When trying to maintain the structure from the traditional NAS, it makes mobile access difficult. We live in a mobile world. Users want cloud-like flexibility, but again, traditional NAS or primary storage devices make this really hard for IT to provide that that the users want today. Organizations need a cost-effective upgrade into the modern world, and what we mean by that is, how do you take your current infrastructure, your current primary storage, without having to do a rip and replace, and provide the cloud-like features that users want, while at the same time maintaining the IT department's control and meeting the requirements for audited processes and procedures that are required, especially in the legal environment. This study was done by Osterman Research and points out that in organizations of over 1,000 employees, greater than 43% of those employees admit to using public cloud storage services such as Dropbox against IT's wishes. So even if IT has said you're not allowed to, or the company has a policy against using public cloud storage services, employees are using them anyway. This was a study done by Enterprise Strategy Group, which surveyed companies that have already embraced the business or enterprise versions of public cloud storage services. So they've already embraced the public cloud. They already have signed up for the business enterprise services that those companies provide. And 97% of those companies surveyed want to bring that back in-house. So after having already even experienced the enhanced features of what were supposed to be enterprise features, they want to bring it back in-house. The reason they want to bring it back in-house is they want to know exactly where that data resides. To the point of going up and touching, here's the appliance that holds my data. They want to be able to perform LAN-grade access to folders and files, roll those folders and files or that data into their standard audited processes and procedures, including backup, which you just can't do with the public cloud. They want to make sure that they have continued controls and knowledge over where those files and folders have gone and who's using them. They want the ability to leverage off their existing on-premises infrastructure and investments. Not to mention the fact that public cloud service providers, those services become very expensive over a short period of time. So what is Transporter? Transporter is a fully integrated appliance that includes all the software, hardware, storage, and compute power you need to deploy your own private file sync and share solution inside your data center or your IT room, on-premise, wherever you decide to place the data, wherever you decide to place the appliance. Provides complete mobile access to folders and files, enterprise file sync and share capabilities, includes global replication, so the ability to place transfers anywhere in the world and manage exactly which data is on which transporter at any given time, and provide remote access to data as well as remote site replication. It extends existing file servers and NAS systems, so it's a bolt-on, not a rip and replace, so it bolts on to your existing infrastructure and helps you deploy your folders and files on your existing primary storage. It's non-disruptive to current systems and processes, so like I said, it's a bolt-on. Much higher performance and capacity than the public cloud. We don't have any limitations since it's your storage, it's on your site and your infrastructure. You don't have any limitations over file sizes uploaded or downloaded. You get LAN rate access to folders and files in a cloud-like file sync and share environment because it's on premises, so anybody that's connected to the LAN gets higher performance. Dramatically less expensive than public cloud, and 100% private. Let's talk a little bit about how the transporter works. Focus first on the black solid arrows back and forth between what we call authorized devices. The transporters are represented by the blue rectangles or 2U rack mount servers that you see on the bottom of this graphic. And then the black solid arrow up to, we'll call those authorized mobile devices. We've got some mobile phones, a tablet, and a laptop computer. Transporter is unique in that it creates an encrypted peer-to-peer network between authorized devices. So between that transporter on the bottom left we just talked about and the mobile devices up on the top left, that's an encrypted peer-to-peer link between those devices. How that link is initiated is a user in that building there with the green tree there on the bottom left invites an authorized user to share a folder to get access to some files. That invite is sent down to that user on the laptop in the form of an email where they can accept or decline that invitation to participate in that folder. If they click accept, then that sends a signal up to our central service represented at the top of the screen there, connected with the dotted line. Sends a signal to our central service to allow authorization of those two authorized devices to connect, which then sends a notice to those two authorized devices, instruction to create an encrypted key and establish that encrypted peer-to-peer network between the two devices. So by just sending a signal and instructing those two devices to create their own encrypted key, those encrypted keys stay only on authorized devices. They continue to communicate directly via the black line which represents the data flow. So the data goes only between the two authorized devices. We never hold any keys in our central service. We never hold any data. Data doesn't transfer through our central service. We don't have the keys. We can't see what the data is going back and forth, and we don't have access to any of the encryption keys. So it's completely private and establishes really a peer-to-peer, an encrypted peer-to-peer mesh network in any way you'd like to deploy the transporter so that you can create remote site replication as represented by the building to the right at the bottom right of that graphic, where you might have two locations and replicate between the two locations. So it's an interesting concept of which we've been awarded a patent because nobody's done this before in terms of creating an encrypted peer-to-peer network, creating a mesh to facilitate a private cloud infrastructure. It's all like what Skype did to the VoIP marketplace in the late 90s, early 2000s, was the original voice over IP companies, which largely don't exist anymore. They all allowed you to use your internet connection to essentially connect to a large switch at the telco and then be routed back to somebody else. And then Skype came along and said, we don't need that large switch at the telco. We don't need to pay for that infrastructure. Let's just allow our customers to connect between themselves. And that's exactly what we're doing to cloud storage today. You don't need somebody else's data center. You don't need somebody else's computer. You can use your own infrastructure and allow your own infrastructure to manage those connections and create that same cloud-like user experience. This is an example of what that user experience looks like. So this happens to be a Apple computer. This is a familiar Finder screen. The transporter logo off to the left, you click on that and you get a familiar folder listing. You right mouse click on folders and you have all the same functionality that you would have with folders that are local onto your machine, or some of the invite users, view versions or revisions to a particular document, restore an older version of a document, undelete files in a particular folder. All those transporter options are available there in that transporter contextual menu. If you have a Windows machine, it would look very similar, but in the construct of Windows Explorer, you'd have a transporter icon on the left. You click on it and you'd have all the folders and files there, just like you would in any other location from a Windows folder standpoint. Let's talk about some of the challenges that law firms face. First and foremost is to maximize billable hours. Time is money, so efficiency is critical. Quick access to folders and files is a big part of that efficiency aspect. So once deployed, Transporter requires almost no administration, saving time and money. It's a fully integrated appliance that takes care of itself. There's no additional software you need to create the remote site replication. There's no additional software or per user fees necessary for user file sync and share. It's all included and it's easily deployable. Protect confidential files from authorized access. Transporter runs an encrypted, secure, as I mentioned before, private peer-to-peer network. Prevents unauthorized access. Users must be invited in order to see folders, so nobody can get access to it unless you already have been made aware that they've been granted access to a particular folder. Helps you preserve attorney-client privilege. Unlike other providers or public cloud providers, encryption keys are only held by the transporter administrator, you, on the transporter. Nobody else has access to it. Nobody can get to those encryption keys. Access sensitive client and case files from mobile devices. We live in a mobile world. It's important to be able to have access to folders and files anywhere and anytime. You don't know when you're going to get the phone call and need this particular item or that. So we provide a simple method of being able to access folders and files from mobile devices over the internet at any place, at any time, even though it's encrypted peer-to-peer networking between transporter and authorized devices, so you're confident that it's secure. Maintain a second copy of client files for disaster recovery purposes. So the remote site replication, which is automatic and inherent and included in all the transporters. If you have multiple locations, you can have transporters deployed at several locations and do remote site replication amongst all those locations, amongst all your locations, and then have those locations have the folders and files that they need on site, as well as replicated to a central core location to ensure that you've got everything backed up and everything available. If one site goes down, the replicated location can keep serving those folders and files until the site that has lost power comes back online. Collaborate with the team working the same case, maybe in a remote location. So a lot of times in dispersed work infrastructures or dispersed networks, you've got people in multiple locations that need immediate access to the exact same folder or file. Demonstrate a chain of custody of documents used as exhibits in trial. So we've got an example in one of our next slides that talks about using audit logs. An attorney can provide chain of custody for files located on the transporter. You can search based on case or matter and identify particular folders or files that you might need in order to provide those particular files to counterparts, colleagues, or clients. Store and then quickly access large numbers of documents. So as opposed to public cloud storage, you're not limited in terms of capacity or upload requirements or file sizes. Limit time and resource devoted to IT, to manage IT systems. So it's a simple to deploy, simple to maintain system that actually provides the ability for users to self-service at a greater level than they're able to with the traditional storage infrastructure. They can rename folders, but they stay the same name on the core transporter, and They can reorganize them by date or by name, whatever works best for that particular user, and other users see it the way that it makes more sense to them. So it's easier for your end users to self-service. Costs of public cloud service providers is surprising to a lot of the customers that I talk to. They think that $15 per month per user sounds a little bit cheap, but then after you get 50 or 100 users on there and you see after a couple of years the amount of money that you're spending, it becomes a lot more than what a lot of companies originally thought. So this is a quick comparison showing that with the transporter, you can recover your costs in a matter of months. Here are a couple of examples of how attorneys have used the transporter in terms of the value proposition and the security in order to protect attorney-client privilege, the ability to have manageable costs that you can amortize over time and have predictability in terms of what the costs are, the ability to actually access folders and files from anywhere and to be able to have a document on your iPad, on your iPhone, or your Android device in the courtroom. We've got examples of attorneys that have actually used the transporter and iPads in particular in courtroom, and as opposed to having to have the document war room, if you will, in the hotel next to the courtroom or across the street. All the documents are being served up by transporter in the court data center, easily available for attorneys in the courtroom, being able to bring those documents available and submit those as evidence in the courtroom live during litigation. So let's talk a little bit about how you integrate your NAS with the transporter. So transporter NAS integration provides simple, secure mobile access to data kept behind your firewall without the VPN. So a lot of times your users are complaining about the cumbersome VPN. You need a secure and simple way to still provide access to folders and files on your primary storage without the use of VPNs. We sync storage appliance shares or paths with the transporter. So your traditional shares synchronize with the transporter. It's an active bidirectional synchronization. We augment NAS appliances with all transporter benefits. So you essentially get a file sync and share capability on your primary storage when you introduce transporter into your environment. Let's talk about that a little bit further. So this big square represents the firewall, and the transporter is represented by the 2U rack mount server there. And then you've got that gold or yellow line between the transporter and the primary storage represented by NetApp here. We chose the NetApp logo because they own so much of the market share. So the NetApp administration has presented a particular folder or groups of folders and pointed the transporter at those folders on the NetApp that become replicated from the NetApp onto the transporter. And once they're on the transporter, they conduct a bidirectional synchronization. So somebody can still access those folders or files in the traditional manner if they're on the LAN and they'd like to access their shared drive and their traditional shared folders, and they make a change to a document or a spreadsheet, and it's saved to the primary storage. That's immediately replicated back up to the transporter. And then the mobile users, which are represented by the devices off to the right, they have access to those folders and files and their changed state wherever they might be in the world. If the user on that laptop happens to make a change to a particular document, it saves to the transporter and also makes that change to that same file back onto the primary storage, in which case the traditional user accessing it from your LAN via a shared drive has access to that now newly changed document. This is all done simply and easily, again, maintaining connectivity on your LAN between your primary storage and the transporter inside the firewall, and then via the encrypted peer-to-peer link that we talked about before outside the firewall, represented by the gold arrows pointing to the mobile devices. We're compatible with any CIS share, so it doesn't matter which logo you want to choose. A standard share, CIS share works fine in this environment. Here's an example of what I mentioned before with respect to branch offices. So one of the problems with branch offices is many of the current architectures require a VPN access to tunnel back into your core data center to get access to folders and files. It's a little bit cumbersome. VPN tokens expire or need to be reconfigured, causing a call into the help desk. If you've got 100 users or 200 users or more, that can be kind of cumbersome on a daily basis. Internet connections might go down or be faulty. So your branch offices a lot of times are probably complaining they can't get ready access to folders and files because they're having to be routed right back into the core data center represented here on the right-hand side in the box that says HQ. By deploying a transporter at that branch office, the transporters are synchronizing with each other in an automated, persistent manner, so they're always up to date with the latest and greatest folders and files. This is accomplished over a standard internet connection. That's right, no MPLS required, no T-lines, a standard internet connection. So it's low bandwidth, high latency for us, which is just the opposite of what you normally hear when it comes to remote site replication. Special software or hardware is needed, and you need low latency, high bandwidth connections. Not us. Standard internet connection, low bandwidth, high latency is fine, and we can still maintain that synchronization between remote sites. That allows your branch office to have a light IT footprint, a simple plug-and-play appliance, light IT footprint providing them with local area network access to folders and files. So that increases speed, it increases their performance, it increases their ease of accessibility to folders and files. One of the great benefits to that also is you might have that branch office's data replicated onto that branch office so they can get local access to folders and files. You may also choose to put some other data out of that branch office just to ensure that there's remote site redundancy or replication, those users of that branch office can't see those files. And therefore, if the HQ were to ever go down, the remote sites are always serving up the folders and files to mobile users or other users. And on site, locally, they haven't noticed that the headquarters has gone down. And any changes they make to folders and files in the meantime will get replicated back to the HQ when the HQ comes back online. Here's an example of how the transporter will work in an environment that includes partners or clients. So you don't have to have a transporter in order to get access to the folders and files. You just need to be invited to that share. You can invite partners and clients to that share in the form of guest users or actual organizational users with greater controls. Guest users are not allowed to share beyond that one particular point. So it's a safe way to ensure that you're sharing the folders and files with partners and clients. And if they ever need to be removed from that project or be removed from your organization, transporter, once that user is removed from that folder, file, or the organization, will remote wipe those folders and files from any of the devices they've been authorized to use them on.
On this slide, we have an example of a typical deployment. In the corporate HQ, which is in the middle to the right of the slide, you've got a couple of transporters represented by the blue 2U rack mount servers. They're connected to your traditional NAS or your standard shares via our network storage connector, which is automated bidirectional synchronization of those standard shares, the folders and files that you might have on a NAS, onto the transporter and then made available externally. So the mobile users have access to the folders and files that are on the transporter as well as the folders and files that are on your NAS device. And they can get access to those folders and files as they need anywhere they have an internet connection. So no cumbersome FTPs to log into and navigate, no cumbersome VPNs. And as well, you've got a branch office in the bottom left-hand corner that if you choose to put a transporter at that location, you have a light IT footprint allowing those users to have local access to folders and files. So they're getting access to the folders and files at LAN rate speeds. Any changes that they make get synchronized with the transporter at the corporate HQ. So they have access to those folders and files at LAN rate speed, and they also have additional uptime. If the corporate HQ were to lose power, the branch office continues running, accessing files, and doing the work that they need to do. And the mobile users get access to the folders and files that they need that might be at the branch office since the corporate HQ has lost power. Once the corporate HQ has power restored and they're back online, all changes or work that was done in the meantime gets synchronized to the corporate HQ, and thus also provided into your standard backup routines or synchronized back to your standard shares if you've chosen to do that connection. Partners and clients is represented on the top right-hand side by another transporter, one of the smaller desktop versions. They don't have to have a transporter, but if they do, it really improves their access because they don't have to hit the internet every time they want a folder or file. So if it's large files like design files or a lot of files, a lot of times that's a lot easier to have a transporter on site. But if they don't, they can still get access to folders and files off of the transporters over the internet. If it's a partner or client that's finished with a project, or for some reason you've removed that user from your organization, Transporter does remote wipe that data from the authorized devices that they've been accessing the folders and files on. So you can see how we eliminate subscription-based file sync and share fees. The monthly fees get pretty expensive over a period of time. And we provide cloud-based storage in a very private manner without the need for VPNs or cumbersome FTP sites. Here's our product lineup. Transporters are numbered with respect to the number of users that they can ideally support. So the Transporter 500 is geared towards 500 users. And if you needed 1,000 users, you would just increment another transporter. For 2 Transporter 500s, gives you support for 500 users. 300 users would be 2 Transporter 150s. The transporters are broken up into 2 different classes of products. The enterprise class appliances, which are the 2U rack mount servers with dual redundant hot swappable power supplies, SSD metadata acceleration, and full rack mount servers. Those are the enterprise class products. While the work group appliances are smaller desktop units intended to be used in conjunction with the enterprise class appliances, if that's at headquarters, and then one of the smaller units at a remote site where you want to provide local access to folders and files for the users of that remote site. They will work independently, but originally intended to be used in conjunction with the enterprise class appliances.
So the user benefits is that we deliver the cloud experience employees want. They're doing it today anyway on Dropbox. Studies have actually showed that when IT directors are surveyed about how many people in their organization are using public cloud storage services in order to get access to folders and files. And then an actual survey is done inside their company to find the actual number of users that are using public cloud storage services against IT wishes are 10 to 12 times greater than what the IT director thought. In many companies, there's policies and procedures against using cloud services, up to and including termination. But employees, we find, are still using the public cloud services. So we provide the cloud experience employees want, while at the same time providing the ability for companies and organizations to control and manage it in a way that they need. You get your own private cloud. It minimizes WAN traffic to improve network performance. If you can access a folder or file over the LAN, there's no reason to hit the internet or your MPLS connections. Total control over your location of data. So you choose where the transporters reside. You put them at your location. You have complete control over them. So that wraps it up. For now, we'll open it up for a few questions. I'll turn it back over to you, Lisa. Have we got some questions on there? So we've got a couple of great questions here. One is, are there any per user per month fees? No, there's no per user per month fees. There's no subscription. We sell this product as a traditional appliance. There is an annual support and maintenance agreement, which is generally about 18% of the price of the appliance, which we find to be below the industry standard of 20 to 25% of appliance cost. The nice thing about an appliance is you can purchase in a traditional manner using CapEx and then amortize that over a period of years, and certainly there's tax benefits for capital equipment acquisitions. So there's another question here about document management system. I know that law firms a lot of times have fairly elaborate e-discovery systems. We would work in conjunction with those systems. We have a fully open public API that allows integration with other software. So we would work in conjunction with the e-discovery or other types of document management systems. So the other question that we've got here is, how does the transporter synchronize back and forth with each remote site? So we've actually created the world's first file system without a central point of management or control, no centralized metadata. Each transporter that you authorize to connect to another transporter can review what's transpired over the last several hours or even days, and then recreate those transactions in order to synchronize across remote sites, which is how we're able to perform that function across great distances and over lower speed connections. Another question we have here is supporting hundreds of users in a particular law firm. You can increment the number of users by adding a transporter in a grid-like fashion. So you can scale up and scale out with transporter. So if you needed 100 users, that would be 2 transporter 75s or a transporter 150. If you had 400 users, you could use 3 of the transporter 150s or 1 of the transporter 500s. Here's another question with respect to tracking changes to folders and files. We do have audit logs that allow you to report on changes to any particular folder and file with the user identified as to who created that change. And there's another question here with versions and undelete. So yes, you can undelete folders that are, files inside a folder. You can right mouse click on the folder and get a list of files that were deleted, and then you can undelete those files. And each file also, we do save versions, so you can go back and restore an older version of a file. An unlimited number of undelete or versions, just limited only by the capacity on the transporter. So the apps that we have for mobile platforms, we currently support iOS and Android. As well, from a desktop standpoint, we support Windows 7 and later, and Mac OS 10.5 and later. So there's a question here about Active Directory and multi-factor authentication. So we do integrate with Active Directory via IDPs or independent directory partners. So such as OneLogin. So you can a lot of law firms we're finding have got these subscriptions so they can manage a central point of AD integration across multiple appliances or services. And so we provide that, as well as our own Active Directory connector, which allows for quick initial setup to actually import your Active Directory. For those of you that don't want to use an external site or an IDP for such as OneLogin, you can use our Active Directory connector to import your current Active Directory users for authentication and provisioning. Yeah, so here's another question about how to save space on a low capacity laptop and not keep local copy of your data. Great question. We do have 2 concepts there. One is selective sync, so you can have folders and files that you choose not to sync locally and they're only available on the transporter. The other option is we have this concept called the transporter library, and in the every user has their own transporter library, and you can organizationally or by user choose to have folders that you have been shared with or have been shared with you. You can choose to have those folders automatically reside in your transporter library, which is a location only on the transporter and does not sync locally. And we find a lot of law firms decide to set that up from the administration level as a default setting so that all users have the default, so that folders they're shared with go to the library, so that they don't consume a lot of capacity on laptops that might have a low capacity. That also, just to be clear, is a unique library for each user. So it's not like one library where everybody walks into and sees all the data, all the files. The library is unique to each user, and then they have all the folders and files that they've been shared with for particular projects or cases. So great, that wraps it up for now. If you've got any other questions, please contact us at sales@connecteddata.com. We would really like to get you involved in what we call a live look, where we get one of our experts on the phone with a screen share, and you can see how the transporter works. You can take control if you like and click on some of the administrative features and see what it's like to set up a user, share a folder and a file, and that's a live, interactive presentation of how the transporter works, actually being able to log into a transporter and see how things work. So reach out to us and request a live look. You can do that by clicking on the live look request on our website at connecteddata.com or sending a note out to sales@connecteddata.com.
And for those of you still on the line, thank you for staying till the end of the presentation. We would like to give out a few $25 Amazon gift cards. So the winners we have here, we will just email you the gift card at the email registration you provided, so you don't have to do anything else other than this. So our winners are Dennis Jodies, Janine Rubinoff, and Mary Vatcherwale. So we will be emailing you your gift cards after this. And thank you everyone for joining the presentation today.